Hey folks, this is Kalori. Welcome to Scrum and Agile Digest. What is the sprint backlog? The sprint backlog, it will define the work or the tasks that a team defines for turning the prior backlog that it selects for in that sprint into an incremental, potentially shippable product functionality, right? So basically from the sprint backlog, you are taking the work, the user stories, the tasks that you can convert into a potentially MVP, basically the minimum viable product. It's owned by the team. The team is going to decide what they want to commit in the sprint, and basically they'll do sprint backlog grooming. They will utilize process like you have the t-shirt sizing, you have Fibonacci numbers, poker games to basically estimate story points that they need to complete a story. And we will go through all of these processes in detail in the next few slides. So, sprint backlog, again, talk about the same thing. It's the property of the development team. The stories that are selected for that particular sprint. It can change during the sprint as new information comes in, but once it gets locked in, like we mentioned, don't move the goalpost, right? Don't change the acceptance criteria. During the sprint, no one is allowed to edit the sprint backlog except the development team. So nobody else owns it. Time estimates for work completed should be entered by all the team members, and that is the basis of our burn down chart, which is one of the most important metrics of Scrum. It is time boxed, so the sprint has to end on time. The requirements which are not completed during the sprint should go back to the prior backlog, and then they'll be re-estimated and then put into a new sprint. When a sprint is complete, you basically provide a working software to your stakeholders, to your product owner. You get a sign off, and then you move on. All right. User stories in a sprint backlog are decomposed into smaller tasks. These tasks are usually between 4 to 15 hours of work, right? You can have something lesser than 4 hours also, and this is just an estimate. Or if you don't want to go all the way to 15 hours, you might have just maybe 13 hours of work, totally depending on you. But this is usually the approximate that most of the Scrum teams like to work with. And in sprint backlog, basically, you're not trying to boil the ocean, right? You cannot, you don't have to have details about all the user stories. You are trying to only work on the user story that will fit your sprint timeline, right? So let's say you have 20 user stories, only 5 of them fit your timeline. You only work on those 5. You don't work on the rest 15. The team is going to provide a lot of detail on the tasks, okay? And the tasks will never be assigned by the Scrum Master. See what we talked about, the self-organizing team. This is a self-organizing team. They will organize. They will pick up the stories which they feel they want to do. It's picked up by the team, not by the Scrum Master. And this is going to basically promote self-organizing of team, and they'll be more interested in producing the product, so they'll have to buy in. And then, this is kind of a pictorial view of the sprint backlog. So basically from the prior backlog, you have prioritized the stories, you've taken up some stories which go into a particular sprint. You have small, medium, large, and then you break it up into tasks, and all of these stories will go into a sprint backlog. Now, what do you mean by definition of done and definition of ready? What does that actually mean? What's the difference? Definition of ready means basically, when you write the story as a user story, you have to have an acceptance criteria, right? The story has been estimated by the team. The team understands the story and says, hey, if XYZ is met, my story is ready. I have met the definition of ready. What is the definition of done? Definition of done means all the acceptance criteria has been met. Whatever tests that you wanted to carry out for your story, they've been created, they've been tested, all the tests have passed. If there was a defect against those tests, it's been logged, it's been tested. You've done all your testing, right? Regression unit tests, you've done code review by the peer, you've created documentation, technical user documentation, and your software is basically ready to go out in the market, or basically it's ready to be part of another sprint, right? So it's a minimal viable product that is ready to go out the door. So that is the definition of done. Now, it's the difference between definition of ready and definition of done. It's a very fine line. Some companies like to use it interchangeably, and it can be used interchangeably. The definition of ready is more or less the user story is ready. Definition of done is from the product owner's perspective. What they feel is the acceptance criteria of product, and it should meet their demands or their acceptance criteria for them to actually sign up on the product and say this product is good to go. All right, now we've been talking about MVP a lot, right? Minimal viable product. What is that, right? Now, I took a picture of donuts. I love donuts. So, if you look at, you can have you can have a plain donut, right? You can have a donut with, sprinkles. In this case, it's a chocolate sprinkle donut. Now, anything, in project management, there's a term called gold plating, right? Gold plating is actually frowned upon, right? It's not a very positive thing. What it actually means is, if the customer wanted a plain donut, right? You give them a plain donut. You do not add more bells and whistles to it. You don't, add chocolate, sprinkle donut. You don't do that, because not only is it's a wastage of time, it's a wastage of resources. Whatever time we actually tried to use in making this chocolate donut, you could have actually used in making some other product that would have given more value to the customer. Just because you feel that this chocolate donut has more value to you, it may not give more value to the customer. The customer might just be looking for a plain donut. And you have to look at the minimal viable product from the customer's perspective. So by minimal viable product, I mean you have to provide a skeleton of the product that the customer wants, right? That the incremental value that you will provide by giving them a donut. In this case, they wanted a plain glazed donut. Give them a plain glazed donut, right? Do not add more bells and whistles and give them something else which they don't want, which they probably won't like, and you probably sacrifice some features by providing this donut, right? So this is a simple way of showing you what a minimal viable product is. It's basically a product which the customer wants with not any bells and whistles. You provide them which can go directly out the door. It's a simple thing that's been prioritized that they're looking for. All right. Now let's talk about duration of a sprint, right? This is again like a rough method that many Scrum Masters use. So it's the sprint planning meeting. It's usually 2 times the number of weeks per sprint. With that, what I mean is, if it is a 2-week sprint, let's say, the sprint planning meeting will be 2 hours. Right? It will be 2 times the number of weeks per sprint. So if it's a 3-week sprint, it will be a 6 hour of sprint planning. 4-week sprint, 8 hours of sprint planning. And of course, if you have a prioritized backlog already, product backlog, you have all the user stories nailed down, you have your team which understands the user stories. Let's say they were part of the product backlog grooming. You don't really need so much time for sprint planning. This is just, this is not set in stone. It's not, you don't have to treat it as a Bible, words from the Bible. No, it's an estimate, right? You go with it. if you feel that you don't need so much time, great. You can have a shorter sprint planning meeting, but it's best not to go beyond the time specified. It can affect, it can bleed into your other sprint timelines. Now let's talk about relative sizing, right? So we talked about how the team is going to size their stories. They will give you a relative sizing of story points. What does that actually mean? What is relative sizing, right? What is relative prioritization? What do you mean by estimating story points? That is what we're going to look into in the next few slides. So there is something called as a fruit salad game, right? And I'm going to use this game to explain what relative sizing actually means. So imagine, you can see there's a fruit salad. There's some grape, cherries, apple, pears, pineapple, watermelon. So let's say you've come to a party, right? And you've brought a fruit salad, right? And you have different kinds of fruits, right? You have an apple, you have banana, pineapple, many kinds of fruit to make the fruit salad. Now, each piece of fruit, you need to prepare it, right? So basically the user says, hey, you have to rinse, or the party host says, hey, you have to rinse each piece of fruit, you have to remove the seeds, you have to take out the stems, you have to cut into it and prepare it for the fruit salad, right? So during an activity, let's say the user is given one fruit at a time, right? And they have to estimate a size, of the fruit based on the effort, complexity, or uncertainty of preparing the fruit salad. So let's say, so they have to estimate the fruit as small, medium, large, extra large based on the effort that they do for cleaning the fruit or complexity of taking the seeds out or cutting it out. Okay, so, and this is just an example of basically relative sizing. So let's say the user starts with an apple, right? So based on the time that it takes them to wash it, take the seeds out, cut it up, they say, hey, it seems to be like a medium task for me. It's not very complicated, but it's medium. Next, let's say the user is given a grape. So relative to the apple, now the relative sizing comes in, right? Relative to the apple, the grape, preparing the grape for the fruit salad, it's a small task. You have to clean it. There's no seeds you need to take out. You just have to rinse it. You just have to cut it from the stem. So you might call it small. So relative to the apple, which is a medium task, you say grape is a small task. And basically like this, you can, you can categorize the other fruits in your fruit salad and you can come up with the relative number. For instance, a pineapple, you might have to do a lot. Take the seeds out, you have to cut it out. It's a big fruit, so you might have to do, it's large. It's extra large. Watermelon basically might be large. So like this, it's relative sizing. So something that is a medium for you, like an apple, may not be medium for another person, right? It's all relative. So it's not an approximate number. So when users or the team members are basically sizing up the user stories, they are giving an approximate number based on the complexity of the story or how much development effort, code they have to write, testing they have to do. They might say, hey, it might take me 5 hours of work, it might take me 8 hours of work, it might take me 13 hours of work. So if it's 5 hours, I might call it medium. If it's 8 hours, I might call it large. If it's 13 hours, I might call it extra large. So that is kind of what relative sizing actually means. So now that we understand what relative sizing is, let's talk about story point sizing. Now, story point sizing is going to follow the relative sizing method that we talked about, sizing stories. But there are many methods of doing sizing. So you can do planning poker games, you have affinity sizing, you have complexity buckets, you have t-shirt sizing. These are all ways a team will get together and they'll size the stories. So let's talk about planning poker first, right? So in planning poker, if the product owner is present, they will read the story. The team will be given. It's like playing a poker game, right? So team will be given a deck of planning poker cards. The team is going to think about the user story for a little bit, and then they will estimate the value of the user stories without. So the cards will be face down. So basically, they won't reveal the estimate to the rest of the team members, but they will estimate it in their mind. They will have from Fibonacci numbers values. Basically, usually you try to play planning poker with Fibonacci values. So it could be a user story could be 1, just like very tiny user story, 2, size 2, 3, 5, 8, 12, 20, 40, like this. Anything beyond 13, we usually say it's a huge story. Try to break it down further into smaller stories. Or you can do t-shirt sizing like small, medium, large, extra large. And then, once the team has estimated what the value of the story, all of the cards are simultaneously displayed by all of the team members, right? And the team will then discuss the estimates, why they felt the user story was a size 2, why they felt this user story was a size 3, 5, and so on. Now, what we're trying to look for is a consensus, right? So if there are some team members who have provided a very low estimate or very high estimate, we are interested in that. We want to know why they have provided a low estimate, right? Why they think, let's say most of the people think that the user story is a size 5, right? There's one person who might think it's size 1, right? And there's one person who might think it's a size 13. What we want to find out is why those extremes, why size 1 and why size 13. We want to find that out because they might have a good reasoning why the person who thinks size 13, they might have a good reasoning why they think it's a size 13. They might think that more coding is needed and other people may not be aware of it. They might think there might be more testing needed or more time is needed, right? And you want to know about those facts because then you can talk about it more and you can come to a consensus that the other team members might say, hey, I know you think it's size 13, but I think we can write the code in a different way and it might be size 5, or they might agree to him or her and say, hey, I think you're right, it's size 13, I didn't think about this before, let's all make it size 13. Or the person who said it was size 13 might just say, yes, you're right, you can write the code in a different way, let's all make it size 5. So that way you get a more approximate estimate. Similarly, a person who's given you a very small estimate as a size 1, you ask them, why do you think it's a small story? They might say, hey, historically I did the story before, it doesn't need so much coding, it doesn't need so much testing, or maybe I said size 1 because I don't have all the details, but now that you guys are talking about it, I think it should be a size 5. So the idea is you look at the two extremes and you try to come to, and you basically keep playing the poker game again and again till you get a consensus of the right user story, right? So you re-estimate, you re-vote till a consensus is reached. There's a picture of Adamsley planning poker I picked up from a website. They have this cool, the Star Wars pictures. They really like them, so I just put it in. So basically these are your cards, planning poker cards. And the interpretation. For example, you can have a card 0, which is, if the task is already completed, probably call it 0. If it's 1, the task is tiny. If it's 1, 2, 3, they are small tasks. 5, 8, 13, they are used for medium-sized tasks. 20, 40, they are huge tasks, large tasks. Usually shouldn't have this. You should try to break it down to smaller stories. Now, Fibonacci series, we talked about this. This is a mathematical term. And what happens is the series is generated by adding the two previous numbers together, right? If you have a sequence like 0, 0, 1, 2, 3, 5, 18, 13, 21, so on. What you're doing is you're basically, if you look at this, you're adding the previous two numbers to get the next number. So you have 0 and 1, add them, you get 1, 1 and 2, add them, you get 3, 3 and 5, add them, you get 8, 8 and 13, you add them, you get 21. So this is a mathematical concept, Fibonacci series, and in poker game, we use this concept. So basically story point 1, like we talked about, is very easy small tasks. You have easy development, easy testing, minimal risk, complexity. Story point 13, on the other hand, it has significant amount of complexity, possibility of risk, dependency, and it might even have a high business value. Anything bigger than 13 points should be considered an epic and should be broken down further into smaller stories. Good. T-shirt sizing, pretty much the same concept. You use the Fibonacci numbers and you can mark your story as small, medium, large, extra large. You can even have an extra small here. So if your story, let's say, is between 1 and 3 story points, you think it's not too big, it's not too complex, it's a small story. If you think it's medium complexity, there's medium tasks involved, testing, it's a medium story. Large, it's very complex, it's a lot of coding, a lot of testing, a lot of complexity, it's large and extra large, it's really big. Try to break it up into smaller user stories and try to fit it into a small, medium, or large. So this is t-shirt sizing. So when we're estimating the story points, no matter what method we're using, you have to look at the complexity, the time taken, variability, difficulty, cost, and the dependency. All of these factors should be baked into your estimation. And that is how the team will be estimating providing you good estimates. The last method that I wanted to talk about was affinity estimation. What we're doing here is, it's kind of like a silent relative sizing. These methods are very similar. So, the team will go and, they'll draw a line on the wall, or if they have a whiteboard, from the smallest to the largest, right? Kind of like a, size 1, size 3, size 5, something like that. It's a silent activity, so the team members will not be talking to each other, but based on their understanding of the user story, they will review the user story and estimate if the story is tiny, small, big, very large, and put it on the wall. Okay, and then the second step is they will edit the wall. So basically, the team will edit the relative sizing on the wall. The team members basically, they'll read the product backlog on the wall and they'll move the stories around as needed in any direction, right? If they feel it's small, they move it to small. They're kind of editing it, right? If they think it's large, they move it to large. And then step 3, the team members will place the items in relative size buckets and they will write the user story. You can write it into user stories in sticky notes, or you can have there are ALM tools like Jira or other tools which will have these affinity estimation already built in. So if you're using sticky notes, for instance, you place it on the wall, and you're basically estimating relative sizing. So if you think it's a medium, you put it in a medium bucket. Or if you think it's large, you put it in the large section on the wall. All right. So it kind of looks something like this. So you have extra small, medium, large, extra large. So basically, you put the stories in sticky notes. You put it in a small, medium, extra small, large, extra large section. So it's, again, the team basically has put them in size buckets. The product owner, if they're present, can ask the team members why the user story belongs to a particular size bucket, based on their feedback, or based on the team's feedback, they might negotiate, with the product owner and see if it belongs to a different size bucket, or if it can be renegotiated and placed in a different size, relative size bucket or not. So, the concept is all the same, relative sizing of your user stories and then putting them into different sections, different buckets as the team deems is necessary. Similarly, you have a complexity bucket. So each team member except the product owner and the scrum master will gauge the complexity of the story and vote the story point estimation. So the most voted story point will be marked for the story. So the story can be, based on your, so basically, let's say you have, these are your buckets, right? You have a UI design bucket, a business logic bucket, a database integration bucket, and a testing bucket. You have a story in hand, right? So you feel that the UI design for the story is very small. So you say it's small. You think the business logic, the UI design is extra small. The business logic is small. The DB integration, let's say, is medium. And testing is small. So based on that, you feel it's a size 5. You put it in the size 5 bucket. And like this, you can basically look at each and every story and put it in different complexity buckets. And whichever story point is most voted by the team members, that's the most of the team members voted a story should have a story point of 5, then the story point of the user story is taken as 5. And if there's any anomalies, you want to look at the extremes. So if somebody is talking about the story being 21, or somebody says the story is 1, you want to know their reasoning, and you might want to revote and put in the right complexity bucket. So each story point represents normal distribution of time, right? Now, the story point that we talked about, right, you can actually translate it to hours. And that is very important because that will help us determine our team velocity and also our burn down charts. And it will show us if our team is progressing on the right path or not. For example, if you have one story point, which is a tiny story, you could say I can complete it within 4 to 8 hours. A 2-story point, which is a little larger, you can say I can complete it within 10 to 15 hours. A 5-story point, you can say 15 to 25 hours. And totally depends on the teams, how you want to distribute your hours to story point. And this is one of the output that you should get out of your story point, right? How many hours it will take for you to complete a story point and complete a particular story. Any story point larger than 8 points, or usually it's 13 points, is taken as an epic, and you decompose it further into smaller tasks. And these are some of the examples, user story and acceptance criteria. So, if you look at the eMarket website, right, the website project, a story point of 8 means it's a big story. So, the acceptance criteria might be you need to have an email address of the user, a password of the user, company code, date of birth, phone number, checkbox. All of these should be there for your eMarket website to have a big story. I mean, if a story has all these features of the acceptance criteria, you mark it as a 8-point story point. On the other hand, let's say you want to say, if you want to check about email validation, right? That if the email field, you want to validate if it's the correct email address or not, or if it's a correct format, it might be a smaller story point, it's a 5, right? Or if you want to recover a password, you want to send out an email to the user, you provide them a link so they can reset, create a new password. That could be a story point of 2. So this is how, you can look at the acceptance criteria, the team can look at the acceptance criteria, the complexity, the risks involved, based on their understanding, they can give a relative sizing. And then again, this can be a sample sprint backlog. You can have the backlog items with, your story point estimates here. Usually, if you have a tool like Jira version 1, you can easily populate it, or some teams do it in Excel as well. Again, this is more example of sprint backlog. You can have the tasks. You can even break it down into weeks or days in a week, and how much hours you will spend. And this is not for one person, mind you, this is for the whole team. So let's say you have a team of, 5 people, right? So you said the whole team will spend about 5 hours working on the story, code, the user interface app layer on Monday. The team will be then spending 7 hours on Tuesday and then 15 hours on Wednesday on doing the story. So for every story, you can define how many hours the whole team is going to work. So this is all the 5 team members are spending 14 hours, 12 hours, 9 hours like this, right? So that like this also you can break it up into days, and this will also give you an estimation point of how much hours will be needed every week, and then from there you can estimate how much hours will be needed every sprint, and if it fits in your team velocity or not. And these are some of the resources for playing online poker. You can play it in a you can have face-to-face communication. You can get your own card games. You can play it in a room, or you can even play it online. These days playing it online is very popular because you have distributed teams all over the world, and you don't have a luxury to meet in a room anymore. So for distributed remote teams, these are good resources. Other things to keep in mind is, story point estimation is relative sizing. It can be tough. What is a size 3 for you might be a size 8 for some other team. It's totally your interpretation of the user story. How do you translate a work and complexity to hours? These are very, tough questions, right? There are many unknowns in the user story, right? The code that you're working on, the libraries that you're working on, it may not be feasible for your code, and you might find out later the team member needs to take a vacation, sick day, you lose your team members, or you get more unknowns. So there's so many unknowns in the user story, right? So many things can go wrong. So you might have estimated a certain number, but that may not work during this point. So that's why it's very important, as long as the story is very concise and clear, you try to remove the ambiguity a lot. You cannot plan for everything, but you try to do your best, whatever is given to you. You can also use averages. I always like to look at the team velocity over a period of time, and if a team has been working let's say 30 story points in a sprint, I cannot expect them to work 60 story points or 80 story points. So I will always try to make sure that they stick within that boundary of 30 story points, maybe 28, maybe 35, but as close to 30 as possible. So try to use averages, try to see what the team velocity has been in the previous sprints. That's a good indicator. Add buffer, always add buffer, and that's not just Scrum or Agile, is project management, right? You always want to add buffer for the unknowns, right? Unknowns, risk, you add buffer. You use subject matter experts, you use past estimation. So these are some of the things that can help you with better estimation.